What if the earliest signs of dementia have nothing to do with memory and everything to do with fear? Before names are forgotten or confusion sets in, the brain may begin to change in far more unsettling ways. New fears start to surface. Strange, unexplainable, and deeply emotional fears that weren't there before. And while they might seem irrational, they're not random. Research shows that certain fear-based behaviors can appear 5 to 10 years before any memory problems begin, making them one of the most overlooked early warnings of cognitive decline. In this video, you'll discover the 9 most terrifying fears that may be the brain's first desperate cry for help, long before memory loss begins. Number 1. Fear of being abandoned. Margaret, 70, had always been independent until something changed. She began calling her daughter every night, crying and begging her not to leave her alone. She wouldn't stay in the house by herself, even for an hour. Her family assumed it was anxiety or depression, but it didn't respond to therapy or medication. 3 years later, Margaret was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. This fear is rooted in early damage to the limbic system, especially the amygdala, which regulates emotional attachment and threat perception. As those regions begin to misfire, the brain interprets even normal separation as danger. A new study linked sudden clinginess and abandonment fears in seniors to early-stage neurodegeneration, often appearing years before cognitive decline is obvious. Number 2. Fear of getting lost in familiar places. Howard, 68, suddenly stopped going to his weekly poker nights. When asked why, he said, "I don't know. I just feel like I won't find my way home." He became nervous about driving to the store, even though he'd shopped there for years. 2 years later, he was diagnosed with vascular dementia. This fear comes from early dysfunction in the hippocampus and parietal lobes, which manage spatial memory and navigation. Even before memory loss appears, people can feel a vague but powerful anxiety about orientation, a feeling that they might suddenly become lost, even in familiar surroundings. Recent evidence supports that this type of navigation anxiety is a strong predictor of dementia, especially when it emerges suddenly and without other clear causes. Number 3. Fear of water or bathing. Thomas, 75, began refusing to take showers. When asked why, he'd say, "I feel like I'm drowning," or "It's too deep." Even shallow tubs made him visibly anxious. His family thought he was just being difficult, until he started mixing up days and losing memories. He was diagnosed with mixed dementia later that year. This fear is linked to early issues in depth perception, sensory integration, and body awareness, especially in Alzheimer's and vascular forms of dementia. The brain may misinterpret water as a dangerous or unfamiliar environment, triggering panic. Research suggests that fear of bathing in older adults, particularly when sudden and out of character, may be one of the earliest behavioral signs of neurodegenerative decline. Number 4. Fear of eating certain foods. Elaine, 74, suddenly refused to eat meals she had loved for decades. She said her food tasted off or smelled like chemicals. She even accused her daughter of putting something strange in her water. Eventually, she began skipping meals altogether. 2 years later, cognitive testing confirmed early-stage dementia. This fear often emerges from early dysfunction in the insula, the brain region that processes internal body awareness, taste, and trust in sensory input. As it breaks down, the brain may interpret safe foods as dangerous, leading to paranoia, food avoidance, or claims of poisoning. A medical study suggests that when long-standing food preferences suddenly flip, especially with fear or suspicion attached, it can be an early behavioral clue of frontotemporal or Alzheimer's dementia. Number 5. Fear of mirrors or reflections. Irene, 75, began covering mirrors in her home. She said she didn't like how the woman in the mirror was watching her. Sometimes she'd wave at her reflection or talk to it. Her family assumed it was a joke until she stopped recognizing familiar places. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 4 years. This fear is often linked to visual agnosia or mirror misidentification, a neurological breakdown where the brain no longer recognizes reflections as representations of the self. It's most common in Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia and can appear well before memory loss is noticed. A study revealed that fear or confusion around mirrors in seniors may signal early perceptual processing dysfunction tied to neurodegenerative changes. Number 6. Fear of darkness or shadows. Clara, 73, started insisting that all the lights in the house stay on at night. She said the darkness made her feel unsafe, and that she kept seeing things move in the shadows. At first, her family thought it was poor night vision, but as her anxiety grew and her focus declined, they sought help. Clara was later diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. This type of fear is tied to early dysfunction in visual processing regions and disruptions in the brain's sleep-wake regulation. Shadows can appear distorted, and low-light environments make visual misperceptions worse. A major study uncovered that fear of darkness, along with nighttime anxiety, often appears before memory loss in certain types of dementia, especially those involving visual hallucinations or REM sleep disruption. Number 7. Fear of phones, technology, or listening devices. Walter, 71, unplugged his landline and covered his smartphone with foil. He claimed the phone was recording him and that his television was sending messages. He had no prior psychiatric history. Within a year, his neurologist confirmed signs of early frontotemporal dementia. This paranoid fear often arises from dysfunction in the frontal and temporal lobes, areas involved in logic, trust, and social interpretation. The person may perceive everyday technology as threatening, a belief that can evolve rapidly into full delusional thinking. Experts report that early dementia, particularly frontotemporal, may present with tech-related paranoia years before memory loss, often mistaken for conspiracy beliefs or anxiety. Number 8. Fear of being watched or followed. James, 72, became obsessed with the idea that someone was watching him. He installed cameras around his house, covered the windows, and told his wife he felt like, "They're tracking me." When asked who they were, he couldn't explain. As the paranoia escalated, he also began forgetting people's names. His doctors later confirmed Lewy body dementia. This type of fear stems from changes in the frontal lobe, which governs judgment and perception of social cues. When this area is compromised, the brain may interpret ordinary situations, like a parked car or a neighbor walking by, as sinister threats. A clinical study linked new onset paranoia and suspicion in older adults to a significantly increased risk of developing dementia within just a few years. Number 9. Fear that loved ones are imposters. Carla, 76, began claiming her husband was no longer her husband, but someone who looked just like him. She was calm but convinced. He's wearing John's clothes, but that's not him. She avoided eye contact and stopped speaking to him entirely. It took months of confusion before a neurologist diagnosed her with dementia involving psychosis. This chilling fear is known as Capgras syndrome, the belief that a familiar person has been replaced by an identical imposter. It's rare, but when it appears, it's often a signal of early-stage Lewy body dementia or psychotic Alzheimer's. A scientific review confirmed that delusional misidentification syndromes like Capgras often emerge before or alongside memory decline and are among the strongest behavioral indicators that deeper brain changes are underway. These fears may seem irrational on the surface, but they're not. Each one reflects a specific breakdown in brain function. And the most terrifying part is that they often show up years before memory fades. Recognizing these behavioral changes could be the difference between early intervention and missed opportunity.
And there you have it. What are your thoughts? Next, dive into this video for more essential tips to transform your health and help you thrive. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching Healthy End, and we'll see you there.